लाइक करें, सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल आइकन जरूर प्रेस करें।
The mirror reflected more worry than beauty. Aliyah stood there, biting her lip, tugging at the hem of a blue dress that wasn't hers. It was borrowed, from her neighbor, who had insisted she wear something nice for her first ever blind date. The fabric shimmered faintly under the light, but Aliyah couldn't shake the discomfort. The dress was too tight, the heels too high, and the fear of being judged far heavier than both. She had spent years learning to fade into the background, working at a small bookstore, keeping to herself, and saving every rupee to help her younger brother through college. This blind date was her friend's idea, not hers. You need to live a little, they said. Not every man out there will hurt you. But that was hard to believe after everything she'd been through: abandonment by her father, heartbreak from someone she trusted, and the quiet ache of never feeling enough. Tonight, she was supposed to meet someone named Ian. She didn't even know what he looked like. Just that he was a software engineer, polite, and apparently different. She took a deep breath and walked into the cafe, her heart pounding so loudly she thought people might hear it. The place smelled of coffee and cinnamon, warm and comforting, but her palms were cold with nerves. And then she saw him. Ian stood up from his seat near the window, a tall man in a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His smile was calm, genuine, and strangely reassuring. When their eyes met, he didn't look at her dress, her shoes, or her awkwardness. He looked at her, as if searching for something real. "Aliyah?" he asked softly. She nodded, her voice barely finding strength. "Yes." He smiled wider. "I'm really glad you came." They sat. The first few minutes were quiet, filled with polite exchanges and half-nervous laughter. But soon, something unexpected happened. The silence between them didn't feel awkward anymore, it felt peaceful. They talked about small things at first: books, music, food, and slowly the conversation deepened. Aliyah found herself telling him things she never told anyone. About her mother's sacrifices. Her fear of not fitting in. How she'd borrowed her dress because she couldn't afford one. When she finally confessed that last part, her voice cracked. "I just didn't want to look out of place," she murmured. "I thought if I looked good enough, maybe you wouldn't notice how plain I am." Ian's expression softened. He leaned forward, his tone steady and kind. "Aliyah," he said gently, "you don't need fancy clothes to shine. You already do." Her breath caught in her throat. He continued, "When you walked in, I noticed your smile before anything else. You were nervous, yes, but real. I've met people dressed like they walked out of magazines, but not one of them had your warmth." Aliyah blinked rapidly, trying to stop the tears that threatened to spill. No one had ever said something like that to her, not with that kind of sincerity. The mirror showed her reflection, but she barely recognized the woman staring back. Aliyah stood in front of it, adjusting the hem of a borrowed dress, her fingers trembling slightly. The soft pink fabric shimmered faintly in the dim light of her small apartment, but all she could see were the creases, the loose threads, the imperfections she couldn't hide. Her heart thudded as she whispered to herself, "It's just one evening. You can do this." The dress wasn't hers, it belonged to her neighbor, Sarah, who insisted she wear it for her first blind date. "You have to make a good impression," Sarah had said, pushing the dress into her hands. "You deserve something beautiful." But Aliyah didn't feel beautiful. Not tonight. Not ever. She worked at a small bookstore where the days were long and the pay short. Most of her salary went to rent and her younger brother's college fees. She didn't buy fancy things because survival came first. But her friends had begged her to go out, to try something new, to meet someone who might just see her beyond her quiet, modest life. The man's name was Ian. They had met through a mutual friend. He was supposed to be kind, honest, and looking for something real. Still, as Aliyah stepped into the cozy cafe that evening, her heart pounded with fear. She scanned the crowd nervously, clutching her purse tightly, afraid she'd be judged the moment she walked in. Then she saw him. He sat near the window, the fading sunlight touching his face, dressed simply in a white shirt and dark jeans. When he looked up and smiled, something inside her eased. His smile wasn't one of arrogance or inspection, it was warm, patient, genuine. "Aliyah?" he asked as he stood up. She nodded, trying to smile, but her voice barely escaped her lips. "Yes." He gestured for her to sit. I was hoping you'd come. For the first few minutes, the conversation stumbled like a child learning to walk. She was shy, and he was gentle enough not to rush her. They talked about small things, the smell of coffee, the music playing softly in the background, their favorite books. Then, slowly, the words began to flow. Aliyah found herself laughing, her shoulders relaxing. He listened when she spoke, really listened, like every word mattered. It had been years since someone had made her feel that way. But then, in the middle of their laughter, she confessed something she hadn't planned to. I borrowed this dress, she said quietly, her cheeks turning red. I didn't want to come in my usual clothes. I thought you'd think I'm too simple. Ayan paused, then smiled softly. Aliyah, you don't need fancy clothes to shine. Her heart skipped a beat. He leaned forward slightly, his tone sincere. The moment you walked in, I didn't notice your dress. I noticed you, your nervous smile, your eyes, the way you kept tucking your hair behind your ear. You're real, and that's what stands out. Aliyah looked down, her eyes moist. No one had ever said something like the